and welcome to MorningFile. I'm your host, Emma McCarty, and today I am joined with Rachael Finnerty from McMaster University to discuss music therapy. So to start, why don't you just give us a brief overview of music therapy in general?
Okay. Well, music therapy is a self-regulated healthcare profession, and music therapists work towards various healthcare goals. We work with many different age groups and diagnoses to use music in various aspects to reach healthcare goals.
Okay, so your research is obviously centered around music therapy, and even more so the use of music therapy in managing stress and anxiety, which I think is probably even more vital in today's world with everything that's going on. Why don't you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I became a full-time PhD student here at McMaster University in psychology, neuroscience behavior under the supervision of Dr. Laurel Trainer in September of 2019. And I've been working as a music therapist since 2001. And I was motivated to return to school to do research so that there could be even more evidence-based research in supporting the use of music therapy in the healthcare field.
Mm-hmm.
There is some really great research already supporting the use of music therapy, but we need more evidence-based research because it is such a broad field. And so my interest in stress and anxiety, particularly with undergraduate students. So I teach at McMaster for the last 10 years and have had lots of interactions with students at McMaster. And so I wanted to see, how does music therapy, group music therapy, impact stress and anxiety in comparison to what is currently the mainstream intervention, which is verbal group therapy.
Okay.
And also recognizing that we still live in a society where there's a lot of negative stigma around mental health, mental illness, reaching out for support. And when we think about music, often it's not associated with negative stigma. We see people plugged into music, listening to music all the time, and we don't make negative stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that person's listening to music. There must be something wrong with them. Or why is that person like have their headphones in all the time? There must be something, they're struggling with something. We don't make these assumptions about people based on listening to music, but we tend as a society, we still need to be working on not having these negative stereotypes around. If somebody is reaching out for support, or if they're seeing a therapist, that's great. That's wonderful. It's just as good as we're listening to music. That's great. You're seeing a therapist. It's great. You're going to the gym. That's great. And so I was wondering if music therapy was on campus for students. If music therapy was available, would more students reach out to access support because it's music therapy? Does it potentially have less negative stigma, and therefore it's not as much of a barrier to engage? So that's one piece of it. And then in the research that we're going to be starting in the fall semester, we're going to be providing online music therapy groups because of the current pandemic. Yeah. And so we will have a group of 10 students in an online music therapy group. And this group will be using predominantly active music therapy interventions. So those include songwriting, lyric analysis, singing, so interactive use of music and creativity for self-expression, for managing and exploring stress and anxiety. And then we'll have another online music therapy group, which is predominantly receptive music therapy interventions. And this is where the participants will choose what music they want to listen to. And there'd be facilitated discussion about listening to the music. And then there'd be another group where it is verbal facilitation only of managing stress and anxiety. And we're going to be collecting standardized information from standardized questionnaires, such as the State Anxiety Inventory tool. And we're going to be collecting information about perceived stress. And we will be collecting hair samples to measure cortisol.
Oh, wow.
As a biomarker for stress.
Okay.
And we will also be collecting heart rate variability. We're going to explore using an app to gather that data, because again, we'll be gathering all of this data virtually as because that's where we're at currently. So we will be, each of the participants will be in each of these groups once a week for 6 weeks. And we're going to see if there are any changes by looking at these measures, the psychological measures, the biomarker measure, and the physiological measures. Are there changes over the course of 6 weeks? Are there changes from the start of the session to the end of the session? Are there differences between active music therapy interventions, receptive music therapy interventions, and verbal therapy interventions? And that, in a nutshell, is the research that I will be conducting.
Yeah. No, that's definitely important. I like what you said about the stigma, because I do think like regular therapy where you go and chat does have such a stigma. So hopefully this, which is music, something everybody does, can really allow people to get more help, especially on campus.
Yeah, and also to add to that, the other piece is that the participants in these groups we're not seeking students that identify as having a particular diagnosis or being in crises. Mm-hmm. We're looking at this as proactive. So let's have a place where we can come together and look at stress and anxiety, because it's healthy to be proactive in our wellness. And we've already turned that corner when it comes to physical health. I would say as a society as a whole, it's understood that you need to be proactive in your physical health. You don't wait until there's a physical issue to go to the gym or do Pilates or do yoga. It's understood these things, you do it to prevent becoming physically ill and to maintain your health. But we're not there yet in mental health. And that's part of this research, is to also advocate for the importance of seeking support before being in crises.
Yeah, that's amazing, because everybody definitely feels on a day-to-day basis some form of stress and anxiety, and this is a way to allow them to cope with it before you get to a stage.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I guess maybe you mentioned that there's not a lot of research to back up music therapy necessarily at this point. What would you say, though, given the research and what you're trying to prove, are maybe the biggest benefits of music therapy?
Yeah, so there is, I should just to reframe that, depending on the topics, like for example, in neurologic music therapy, which looks at physical rehabilitation, there's lots of very good evidence-based research that it exists, and in various aspects of mental health. This particular study looks at the psychological, the physiological, and the biomarkers, and to have all three in a music therapy study, plus a control group. So there's also a control group. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. As well, there's two control groups, a waitlisted group and a group that won't be doing any therapies. So to have research with all of these different aspects, when looking for funding to promote the use of music therapy in other realms, in hospitals, on other campuses, having all of these aspects in the research can really propel the profession and understanding the impact that it can have. But we already are seeing, like, there are many journals of music therapy. There's a lot of music therapy research published in nursing journals, in rehabilitation journals, in mental health journals, where it is seen that, for example, music therapy groups for managing drug addiction
Mm-hmm.
The dropout rate is very, very low for those attending a music therapy group to manage an addiction, opposed to verbal therapy alone.
Okay.
So there's these kinds of examples of engagement,
Mm-hmm.
and that is so important in meeting the end goals. And then, as mentioned, with aspects of the neurologic music therapy, with Parkinson's disease, for example, and there's quite a lot of very convincing evidence-based research of how music therapy can facilitate movement and enhance gait and walking for people with Parkinson's disease to have fluid movement, for example, and facilitating speech post-stroke. There's and then there's also research supporting music therapy to facilitate communication for individuals with on the autism spectrum. Because it's such a vast field, there's so many examples.
So it sounds like an endless amount of benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess anybody that's looking to learn more about your research or get involved with it will have your email address linked below. And then, and then maybe just, I know you mentioned that you teach a course at McMaster. So anybody that wants to learn more has the option to take the course, or if you could just give a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to mention two aspects. One is that so the music therapy course that I teach at McMaster is offered fall and winter semester. And in the course, it's an introduction to the profession of music therapy, and it's open to all second year and above students. And we touch upon what music therapy is, how to become a music therapist, and the various healthcare areas that music therapists work in. There are many different music therapy approaches, and we talk about those approaches and how they are implemented, the different music therapy interventions and how they are implemented. And we also do talk briefly about the history of music in healthcare, as well as the development of the music therapy profession. So it's a nice little overview of the profession, and also for anybody who's interested in potentially pursuing music therapy as a career, then it helps them to understand if maybe they would like to pursue their master's of music therapy to then become a music therapist, or if they want to do a second undergraduate degree in music therapy, that's also an option. And I also wanted to mention, for those interested in the field of music therapy, that I also have a music therapy academy, which is we used to offer in person. At the moment, we're not doing in-person workshops, but we have webinars. And the purpose of the academy is to provide professional development as well as educational development to people in the community about music therapy and how aspects of music can be used within other professionals' scope of practice, as well as to inform members of the community about how music can be used in a way to support either themselves and others, and to gain a further understanding of the profession.
That was Rachael Finnerty from McMaster University discussing her research with music therapy. If you'd like to get involved specifically with her research or learn more about music therapy, you can click the link below this video. As always, for more MorningFile content and other exciting, interesting news, you can visit cfmu.ca.